ועכשיו אנחנו רוצים לקחת אתכם לחזית הגוברת של אירופה נגד ישראל, אפילו בריטניה, שדווקא עמדה לצד ישראל בתחילת המלחמה, מתחילה להשמיע קולות ביקורתיים ולהפעיל לחץ על ישראל לחתור לסיום המלחמה. הנה דברים שאומר שר החוץ קמרון, שמבקש מישראל לשקול מחדש את המשך המערכה לעבר רפיח.
In terms of UNRWA, intelligence reports on in the Wall Street Journal today suggests that 1,200 UNRWA staff are actual operatives of Hamas or other Palestinian terror groups. 23% of UNRWA's male employees took part in Hamas's military or political framework, and 49% of all UNRWA employees have family or relatives who belong to Hamas or other Gaza-based terror groups. Is that what the taxpayers of Brigham Gould should be having their money used for? To groups who want to murder not just all Jews in Israel, but all Jews in this country?
Every tragic loss of life in Gaza is the responsibility of Hamas and Hamas alone, and some people in this place would do well to remember that fact, Mr. Speaker.
Well, we are very concerned about what is happening in Rafah, because let's be clear, the people there, many of them have moved 4, 5, 6 times before getting there. And it really, we think, is impossible to see how you can fight a war amongst these people. There's nowhere for them to go. They can't go south into Egypt. They can't go north and back to their homes because many have been destroyed. So we are very concerned about the situation, and we want Israel to stop and think very seriously before it takes any further action.
כן, ושמענו, ראשון הדוברים היה אנדרו פרסי, חבר הפרלמנט הבריטי, המאוד מאוד מאוד אוהד כלפי ישראל. הוא נמצא כאן עכשיו, סייר בעוטף עזה, אנחנו שוחחנו איתו לפני זמן קצר. הנה.
Hello, Ofer.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. You've been to the kibbutzim and moshavim in the Gaza envelope. What was the most significant part for you in that visit?
Well, it's just so important to be here to see the destruction and the devastation that was wrought on October the 7th by those terrorists who invaded Israel. So we've been down to Kfar Aza to see the destruction there, to hear stories from people who live on that kibbutz. And of course, we've also met hostage families here. And it's really important we come so that we can bear witness to the events, those horrendous events that shocked the world on October the 7th, and also take those testimonies back to our own countries, to our own parliament, and make sure that people in the UK are aware that this is an ongoing trauma for people in Israel. This didn't begin and end on October the 7th. This is an ongoing trauma for people. So it's so important for us to be here.
Okay. I would like to address the decision to impose sanctions on 4 Israelis from the West Bank. What evidence does the British government have to be making such a decision?
Look, I wouldn't want anybody here to think that because of that decision, there is any less support from the UK government. You know, the support from the UK government for Israel since October the 7th, as we've been told here in Israel by members of the government here, has been tremendous. That support will continue. And, you know, I don't want to distract from that incredible support we've provided to Israel, because it is absolutely vital that Israel succeeds here in removing Hamas. These people don't just want to commit a genocide against the people of Israel. They hate everything we stand for in the West. And I think, you know, the UK government, I think people in Britain understand absolutely that the fight you are in against this form of terrorism is a threat that we face ourselves in the UK and elsewhere in the West.
Yeah, I believe you heard the Foreign Minister David Cameron addressing the situation in Rafah. What are your remarks on that?
Look, there's doubtless, international concern, as there is concern here in Israel, for what happens to genuinely innocent civilians in this, what we hope will be the final stages of a successful campaign to remove Hamas from the Gaza Strip. We know Rafah is a particularly difficult operation ahead. So I think the governments across the world, and indeed voices here in Israel, are urging Israel to proceed cautiously to ensure that, as you have been doing, there's a continued compliance with international law and that genuinely innocent civilians are protected. But speaking for myself, I'm absolutely clear that we have to support Israel in the action they are taking against Hamas, and that may require further action in the south of the Gaza Strip. And it's absolutely vital that you are given the cover and the support to be able, as a country, to remove Hamas. Because, as I've said, they are not just a threat to Israel. Their ideology and everything they stand for is a threat to all free people anywhere in the world.
I agree with you. I want to ask you about the demonstrations that we witnessed on the Westminster Bridge I saw them and I thought to myself, what has happened to the UK? Do you share the same sentiment?
Yes, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, these scenes from some of these protests have been deeply distressing to not just British Jews, but to many people in Britain, because we've had open support for terror on our streets. We've had people calling for jihad, calling for death to Jews. And these scenes are distressing not only to Israelis, they're distressing to that, moral majority in the United Kingdom, the decent, law-abiding majority, who are not on the streets of Britain protesting against Israel. This is a very, very small minority of people, but they are a very loud, very unpleasant in some cases. The battle Israel is fighting here against this form of terrorism is one that threatens democracies and our values of tolerance and justice and freedom across the West. So it is absolutely important that Western countries line up behind Israel. So I consider it a privilege. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for your important words. All the best.
Thank you. To you too.